We do have Hal Kempfer standing by, and we do want to bring in Hal because we want to discuss the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. As always, Hal, it's good to see you. Let's get straight into the news here. Joe Biden on Friday laying out what he described as a three-phase Israeli proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza in return for the release of Israeli hostages, saying that it's time for this war to end. He actually posted some of the specifics of the plan on social media. It's pretty lengthy, but it is worth a read. I want to just read the 10 bullet points that are here. Phase 1, a complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces from populated areas in Gaza, release of some hostages and some remains of hostages, Palestinian civilians can return to their homes in Gaza, and rounding out phase 1 is a surge in humanitarian aid. Then we get to phase 2. That includes a permanent end to hostilities, in exchange for the release of remaining living hostages, as well as Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza. And that brings us to phase 3, which says major reconstruction plan for Gaza and final remains of hostages being returned to their families. A lot of information there, Hal, but I'm going to assume the actual proposal that made it to Hamas was a little more robust. What sort of details do you feel like were left out of this social media post?
Well, Austin, there's a number of things that would be looked at, which is how would the Israel IDF, if you would, how would they disengage? At what phases would they disengage from these urban areas? What positions would they maintain outside of these urban areas? There's some basic battlefield geography they've got to figure out, which is, it's one thing to say withdrawing from these populated areas or urban areas, but at some point you actually have to have lines on the ground to figure out what that looks like. The other issue is certainly the rules of engagement in terms of if the IDF forces are attacked, what that would look like, and also how quickly they would disengage. And then there might even be some discussion of the subterranean side of this because of that massive tunnel, you know, that Gaza metro complex throughout Gaza. Would the IDF stop underground operations, underground clearing operations? And of course, that's where they suspect that some of the key Hamas leaders, Yahya Sinwar and others, are hiding out, is in this underground area. So there's a lot of issues. And actually, I could go through the next two phases too. A lot of issues that have to be discussed. And one of the things that Israel has talked about is this buffer zone, this security buffer zone around in Gaza, which is on the Gaza side of the border. They've talked about it going in about 1 kilometer. What are they going to do about that? Will that stay there for an extended period of time? There's just a lot going on there. One thing I should mention though, with this is a this is not a radically different proposal than the one that was out there a month ago, 2 months ago, if you will. It's a 6-week three-phase sort of approach. It's very similar to what was out there before. It was very similar to what was we thought was making a headway some weeks back, that then just completely fell apart, if you recall that. And then Hamas said they had accepted it, but it wasn't this proposal. It was actually something else that was far less than this. One thing that Netanyahu is dealing with, and President Biden just alluded to that, are the deep schisms and divides within the Israeli cabinet. There are those ministers who absolutely will not, they say you have to destroy Hamas in entirety. You cannot have a ceasefire. And right now the IDF is in downtown Rafah, and that is the last urban stronghold of Hamas. So they are pushing very hard to continue the war. They're saying, look, don't stop just a yard short of what they would say the goal line, if you will. Keep pressing forward, keep doing this all the way. And so they're making a headway. Although the opposition leader, a member of the legislature, Lapin, who's been very vocal about his opposition to Netanyahu on a number of different levels, this included, has said that he would actually backstop the Netanyahu coalition. In other words, he might enter as near as I can figure out reading this, that he might enter the coalition, at least temporarily, to keep the government from falling while they implement this ceasefire. I don't know if that's unprecedented in Israeli politics, but it is certainly unusual from everything I've seen that a strong opposition leader who opposes Netanyahu on so many different levels would step in to do that, because he realizes for Netanyahu to do something like this, which would be very statesmanlike, less partisan and more statesmanlike, it would probably cause his current coalition to fall apart. So he's willing to do that. That tells you how much impetus in Israeli politics across the board is going on. Right now, Netanyahu is saying he wants to finish the job. He wants to take out Hamas, the usual line of rhetoric that we're hearing, although behind the scenes there have been basically some rumors that he is somewhat amenable to this. But again, goes back to your question, which is the details that have to be filled in. There's a ton of details in terms of how does this disengagement happen, exactly how many hostages or hostage remains come back, how is this going to be done, and then of course the issue of sending in these 600 trucks of aid every day, as we saw with our pier, the J-Lots pier, which kind of fell apart due to weather, and now they're trying to fix it. They get the trucks off the pier, and as soon as they get into town, they were being looted and taken down. And so distribution of aid within Gaza is a huge issue, and that has not been resolved. And that's something that needs to go into this agreement.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's expand a little bit more on the turmoil within the Israeli government. Defense Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich issued statements attacking the Israeli proposal. You were alluding to this. Both of them, by the way, say that they heard about this Israeli proposal for the first time when Biden gave that speech about it on Friday. So they said they told Netanyahu if this proposal goes through and turns into a deal, they will leave the coalition and they'll leave the government. What's going on within the Israeli government, Hal? This was an Israeli proposal, right? So how is it that Israeli officials are just hearing about it through the television?
It's a joint proposal. I mean, nothing I don't think has intellectual property rights by one country anymore. They've been talking about this for so long. The challenge he has is he has these far right. In order to put a coalition together, he had to reach out to these very far right parties. These are far right parties who literally openly discuss evicting the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank and assimilating these as wholly Israeli territories or Israeli land across the board. And of course, there's no negotiation when you're going in like that. That's almost the flip side of the Hamas position, which has always been to basically evict Israelis from Israel, Jewish Israelis from Israel, and take it over as a Islamic state, if you will, which of course leaves no room for negotiation with Israel on that. So these are kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum, if you will. Also, Israeli settlers are attacking aid convoys going into Gaza, coming from Jordan, which is causing tremendous tension and friction with Jordan and the King of Jordan, who's been a pretty good ally, if I could use that term, with Israel over many years. And these particular ministers are tied to the settlers, tied to some of the actions by some of the more extreme side of the settlers, and it's creating huge problems, and they may walk. And if they walk, the challenge you're going to have is probably more in the West Bank, because that's where the settlers and these and the political influence of these far right parties has the most impact. And frankly, there's enough violence involving settlers in the West Bank for these ministers, if they left the government, turned around and walked away. I think Israel's going to have a real challenge, a security challenge, dealing with its own settlers, its own citizens in the West Bank, who are already, by international standards, probably out of control, for the best way to put that, in terms of what they're doing. And it could get worse. It could be a situation where the IDF is actually having to confront these settlers with potential use of force implications on that. So there's a lot of things that Netanyahu has to consider.
There was something else that piqued my interest about this plan. What could be the calculus behind putting this information out there, posting it on social media, Biden making a speech? Correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't normally publish these proposals. They usually leak through the media, right, Hal?
Well, they kind of do. I have to tell you, at this point, this thing has gone on for so long that there could be somebody in there who said, hey, let's just put this out there. We try to do this quietly behind closed doors. We sometimes leak it to the media to try and influence the parties. And frankly, they're all probably looking at each other and saying, that strategy is just not working. Nobody seems to get it. So now they're putting this down there, kind of a marker, if you will, a benchmark, something to shift from. The reports are that Hamas has indicated they may be amenable to this. They kind of like it. As you may recall, Hamas is, there's two primary parties, Israel and Hamas. And Hamas was the biggest sticking point the last time that they had something like this on the table. So now they have it out there. Hamas is indicating they're somewhat amenable. Of course, the U.S., Egypt, Qatar are really pushing this. They're the force. But you also hear other countries like Saudi Arabia, other Gulf states in the region who have basically lined up to say, yes, we'd like to see this happen. So there's a lot of pressure there. Of course, dangling over all this is the prospect of normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, the biggest Sunni Arab state in the Middle East, the powerhouse, if you will, the central state of certainly the Saudi Peninsula, but where Israel sits. And if that shifts, then that changes the whole balance of power, if you will, across the Middle East. So there's a lot riding on this right now, but inside of Israel, kind of goes right back to that coalition politics, and the challenges that Netanyahu has on this. So I think they've thrown this out there. The other thing they're watching too is the man on the street stuff, if I can use that, and I mean that not man and woman, I should say, on the street of Israel. If you look at the protests that are going on the streets, if you look at the body politic, what's happening in these major cities in Israel, there are huge protests right now, calling for the release of hostages, calling for the government to get serious about the release of hostages. And with that, putting this out there in the way that they did, on a website, actually posted as an official policy thing, this might be part of the information side of this, the information, I could say information campaign, but it could be part of this, is to either put pressure on Netanyahu or to give Netanyahu a little more political latitude to make the decision to accept this. A couple of different ways I could interpret that, and so that may be why you see this posted the way it was.
Let's move away from politics for a bit. I want to ask about the battlefield. So you're looking at a video posted by the IDF showing a strike that killed a Hamas terrorist in Khan Yunis. Do we know if these are terrorists that have been posted up in Khan Yunis this whole time, or are these terrorists that were in Rafah but have now since moved back further north? Do we even know how?
That's a great question, and obviously with the Gaza Metro, the underground system, one of the challenges I should mention, and this has been a challenge with the Rafah campaign as well, is and it's not that they hadn't seen this in Khan Yunis, it's not that they hadn't seen this in Gaza City, that the Hamas will move within the buildings. They don't move in the open, and they'll move underground. And they'll move underground between buildings when they attack. The reason they don't move out in the open, the reason they don't move across streets or across territory in the open is because the area is completely covered by basically aerial surveillance, drones, and easily hit by airstrikes, on-call strike aircraft that are circling overhead, waiting to get a target. And so what they do is they stay inside. It is tough to tell. Have they always been there? Probably within Israeli intelligence, within IDF intelligence, they could probably answer that question to say what they estimate, whether they were always there and they just got hit, or whether they moved back into Khan Yunis and they got hit. They could probably answer that question better. But there's a very good chance that they never left Khan Yunis. In fact, if you go back a couple, 3 weeks, there was a belief that Yahya Sinwar and his family were still deep, deep, deep underground in the tunnels in the Khan Yunis area. And of course, fighting has been going on in Khan Yunis until very recently. In fact, fighting was going further north in Gaza until very recently. And some of this was the IDF going into areas, urban areas that had been essentially bypassed early on. I mean, they controlled the larger city, but these particular neighborhoods, this particular sector, if you will, was not an area that they cleared building to building, house to house, and certainly underground. And they realized when they were taking a lot of fire and taking armed resistance from those areas, that they had to go back in and basically and deal with the threat that was on the ground and underground in those areas. And of course, Khan Yunis, that is a area that is just layered underground with tunnels. So that's a good question. I don't know. I was reading it today and I was kind of wondering myself, did they escape from Rafah into Khan Yunis, or were they in Khan Yunis? And right now I can tell you it's not entirely clear, although it's very likely that they never left Khan Yunis. There are indications that deep underground, that a number of the leadership figures, they escaped south, but their situation underground was such that they just stayed where they are. Although some could have escaped, gone to Rafah, and that they could be there. And that may be another reason. That's what we don't see. That could be why Netanyahu is really holding back, is he may say, if we can just get, 3 more blocks and get into that particular tunnel complex, we might be able to take out a high-value target or two, which would make things, much easier within his coalition.
You bring up the tunnels. I have one more video I want to pull up. This one shows some of what the IDF has found in Rafah, including tunnel infrastructure. What's the latest on what the Israeli military has been doing in Rafah, Hal? I know the IDF is moving further into Rafah, correct?
They are, and in fact, they're downtown. If you look at that Philadelphia, that border area, if you will, down the bottom, what they've found there is a phenomenal number of tunnels, many more than they knew existed, that go into Egypt. That is the smugglers' tunnel haven, if you will, that's been there for decades. That is how the Hamas has evaded sanctions for so many years, is this massive underground smuggling system, subterranean smuggling system. And so they've gone in there, and part of the reason they went in there, and of course this caused tremendous tension with Egypt. They did not want IDF forces right on the other side of the border from them. In Gaza, there was actually an incident where an Egyptian soldier was killed in a force-on-force issue that fortunately was de-escalated quickly on both sides. But that area is something that they need to close off. As they say, it's a back door to Hamas. It's their ability to move arms and personnel back and forth into Egypt, and they needed a way to seal that off before they could deal with the rest of Rafah. And if you look at that area up there, you look at the bottom, and then you see Rafah urban area more to the north, or in this one, more to the northwest.
More to the west, yeah.
What you see there is that they want to seal this off, cut off that back door, and a little bit of a hammer and anvil sort of approach on this, but that's what they're trying to do.
One last thing before we go. We didn't have a chance to ask you about this earlier in the week. A senior Israeli official said that he expects the war to continue for at least the rest of this year. Does that make sense to you, Hal, given the progress that we've seen on their efforts to totally eliminate Hamas?
Well, it does, although I will tell you, I read that and I was like, I wonder if that's more for effect. I wonder if that's part of that has a huge impact on the negotiations. Some of it's a statement of reality. If there's no negotiations, if there is no way to come to a ceasefire, then the reality is that, yeah, they will probably have to be doing mopping up operations throughout the rest of the year. And it will be a very long, slow, grinding, arduous, and for the Palestinian residents there, the civilians on the ground, it'll be a very painful, difficult year while Hamas is finally being eliminated, building by building, and underground, to deal with this. And it's a year where they're not going to be rebuilding. It's a year where they're not going to see the aid flowing in like they'd like to see it flow in. So in that regard, it's putting out a statement of fact, which is if we can't reach some agreement, is probably what the Israelis were, thinking about this when this statement went out. But if there can't be an agreement, then this is the reality that's going to be faced. Now, some of this might be to influence. A lot of this certainly is to influence not only the international side of this, but also the domestic side, if you will, within the Gaza Strip, with the Palestinians there, and hopefully influence them. They read this stuff, they hear about this stuff, and certainly the West Bank, they hear about this stuff. And the thought is that they will put pressure on to Hamas, but also there'll be pressure put in the West Bank, probably on the Palestinian Authority, to work harder to come to some sort of agreement. Now, the Palestinian Authority isn't a party to the negotiation per se, but they are out there. They are an official government entity representing the Palestinians in the West Bank, and they have a potential role to play. That's to be figured out what that is, but there is a role to play with them. And so that could be to, it's not winning hearts and minds, but it might shape the perceptions of what's going on there, and put some pressure on whatever Hamas that the Palestinian civilians have contact with to say, hey, look, enough is enough. By the way, I should mention something. There's a big headline today, which is kind of almost a polling headline, if you will. Is getting a sense of the feelings of the Palestinian residents in the West Bank, that they say, look, things were really bad before October 7th, but as bad as that was, that many of them are saying we'd rather go back to that than what they have now, which is much more restrictive in terms of when they, the curfew that goes from 7 to 7 and everything else. They're saying, as bad as it was before, they really prefer that to what they have now. That's a kind of a shift of perception. That's a shift to saying, hey, maybe we need to figure out a better way to negotiate this thing. And of course, it's the body politic opinion which will eventually drive the leaders to do what they need to do.
Hal, we'll leave it there for now. We always appreciate your time. Take care. Have a good rest of your night.
Okay, you too, Austin.